Well, good evening. Good evening and welcome from the West End Poetry Society. This is by far our biggest Poetry in the Parlor reading, and this is very exciting. Thank you to Hartford Public Television. We are being filmed today, and that's really exciting. So thank you very much for coming this evening. This monthly series began this past July. Rennie, when he was first named Poet Laureate, that was his first reading, Poetry on the Porch. It was fantastic. And we're having so much fun, we decided to move it indoors for Poetry in the Parlor. We have two spectacular poets who are reading for us this evening. We are very fortunate to have Penelope Pelazan and Mr. Dick Allen. Thank you both very much for coming. Okay. If people want to come, there are seats. Rennie wants me to let you know we have closer seats, so if you'd like to have a seat,
Two here.
come sit down. The Penelope Pelazan's second poetry collection, Where Flesh is Flame, Whose Bone is Time, was published in 2014 by Way Wiser Press. Her first book, Nostros, won the Hollis Sumner's Prize and the Poetry Society of America's Norma Farber First Book Award. She is the co-author of Tabloid Incorporated, Crimes, Newspapers, and Narrations. Ms. Pelazan's poetry and prose have appeared in journals including Poetry, Field, the Hudson Review, the Kenyon Review, The Nation, Fourth Genre, the Yale Journal of Criticism, and the British Journal of Aesthetics. Her translations have appeared in Poetry, the FSG Book of 20th Century Italian Poetry. Ms. Pelazan's awards include the 2012 Amy Lowell Traveling Scholarship, the 2012 Center for Book Awards Trapbook Award, a Lannan Foundation, and Discovery, the National Award. Ms. Pelazan is currently the Associate Professor of English at the University of Connecticut. Please help me in welcoming Penelope.
I thought what I would do, I'm going to read mostly work from the newer book tonight, and I'm going to sort of see how we feel at about like 25, 30 minutes, and then if you want a couple more, we can do a couple more, but I'm also very conscious of the fact that sometimes you might want to take a break. So I'm going to start with a poem called Blood Memory, and I'm actually going to read this because it's a poem that some of you may have heard it before if you've been to another reading in the area, but I have two friends here with me tonight, Mike Stankiewicz and Carrie Lee Pelkey, also former students, now wonderful friends who had spoken to me about this poem and I think have never actually heard it, so I wanted to read it in part for them. The only thing I think that you need to know about this poem, it's set in Naples. I have the pleasure of being the spouse of a diplomat, so I'm in Connecticut about half of the time, but half of the time I'm outside of the U.S., usually living with him wherever he is posted. And we lived in Naples for a couple of years, and so I'm very much inspired by place. And you'll notice that this is a book that moves around a lot from landscapes. Both from Europe and then to the Middle East, where a lot of the poems are set. So the poem Blood Memory is set in Naples, and I think that's all you really need to know. There's some time shifts in the poem, but I'll just pause. I think that you'll get where they're happening. Blood Memory. Hunched in the bath, 4 ibuprofen gulped, too late to dull the muscle cramping, to say to God who thirsts monthly for his slake of iron, I am just a body bleeding in bad light. But after an hour, as the wrenching wanes, I run more water in, remembering when I was a girl, my mother knew one cure for this pain, and while I cried, carried me mugs of tea and whiskey clouded with sugar cubes. In a palm of pinkish water, I scoop up a burl of my flesh, almond-sized. The tissues settle, livid red to nearly black, as I tilt my hand against the light to see it glistening like a ruby cabochon, appealing as it appalls, recalling one future years ago that would have borne itself on my blood had I allowed. the question swims into view. Would I harbor another life now? Last spring, I sat above the harbor in Naples with 3 friends whose children, after a week's vacation, were all safely back at school. Palpable the holiday mood a morning freed from offspring brought. I felt a guilty pleasure I'd go home, not to cook someone's lunch, but to read. Still, it wasn't long before our talk's compass needle trembled north toward the motherland. Soccer games in the Phlegraean fields, ancient sun reborn and swaddled Puto pink in mist above the fumaroles, rococo messes of gelato, first words whose honeyed gravity weighed on me like a toddler's head snugged below my chin in sleep. Then Serena described troubles at her daughter's school. Their new principal refused to pay the local gang's protection money. And so the teachers arrived at work one day to find the little hutches where children kept rabbits and a clutch of chicks overturned. From the playground swings, the throat-cut animals hung. Next time we come for you, someone had written across the door in blood. Now parents wanted the principal to pay. That was how these things were done. Screw her ideals, Serena heard. That bitch is going to get our children killed. A blade bossed with oyster floats. The harbor glinted below Serena's voice. Into that water, Apicius wrote, the Romans tossed slaves to glut the eels they'd later eat with tits and vulva, succulently cooked, of sows who'd aborted their litters. And from that water, fishermen pulled a girl who'd been under at least a week. She may have been the missing one the papers were reporting on, whose photo showed her, lippy, grinning, 17. A week in that water. She was scoured of identity. Water's thick in Naples as martyr's blood, rusting in ampules in the cathedral, where it liquefies on schedule. And it does. I've seen the miracle, to show the city still protected by the saint. I can't remember, 6 months later, loggy in my cooling bath, if some net had hauled these images writhing up at me that morning as we sat together near the harbor, or if they tangled in my thoughts that same evening after Serena's dinner honoring Women's Day. Across Europe, lapels flickered yellow wicks of mimosa, marking the feast. And in Naples, flowers fumed for women burned on the flank of Mount Vesuvius, where they'd been sewing sweatshop zippers on fake designer bags. But, as it did with everything, the city managed to transubstantiate horror into carnival. With Teresa and Ellie, I'd walked home late along the harbor. Fireworks seethed above the bobbing masts. Mirroring those Harrier stars, the water seemed to flame, while drowned in lights, the Lungomare phosphoresced. Scooters rippled through reefs of cars, barely slowing for schools of boys and women in flocks, stiletto-heeled, who stalked, screeching, over the cobblestones. From an alley's mouth, a gobbet of men disgorged. One, drunker than the others, loomed over and bent his face to mine. "Where are your babies?" he hissed, spit pricking my skin. "Get home to your babies." Not just drunk, but wetted, his glaze stropped beyond seeing and testing its edge. "You're over the hill for trolling, is that what he meant? Or was he putting all women away, including the vampire lipsticked teens? Whatever he meant to make us bleed." I wince, drain chill water out, drizzle in a little more of the hot, and wonder at this habit of holding others' words as worry stones to fidget absent-mindedly when thought goes slack. Agates of fury, quartzes of scorn. Cold in my ear's palm, the hematite heaviness of a final no. And I still turn over my mother's words, costly pearls handed me years ago in a college project on oral history. She took my assignment seriously, agreeing to an interview as if it would allow her, too, to wash through the rack of half-forgotten truths. Painstakingly on tape, she recorded her life, lapped by sluices and hesitations. Her years in the Women's Army Corps, screening films on safety and hygiene to bored enlisted men. Her depression, decades as a secretary, marriage, until near side B's close there gathered a final muscled wave. How, when she was well past 40, her bleeding stopped. At first, she thought it was her age. Then, slowly, sickly, she understood. She tried to find a doctor who would help her, but her voice cresting, breaking. 5 months along, it was too late, even if she'd had the money. The tapes hiss like receding surf. So here I am, at daybreak, adjusting the taps with my toes. I think we are shelled animals, hauled at by tides, sleeking invasive grit with our nacre. I think of her, hiding in the tub for half an hour to read, think how pleased I was finding her to pull her back to me. Little plumes of my flesh rock in the swells, but my body is bland now, yielding as kelp, and with my toes I pull the plug. Drained, I need a couple hours of sleep. Then I'll start the day again. And maybe, if I'm sleeping late, the dream will come, one that intrigues me almost more than it disturbs, in which I'm falling, bound, into a bay of blood-threshed water. Fear ties me. Brine bites my lungs, and I can't breathe. Then, with a clarity I mistake for waking, I wake below trees, at a table laid variously with meats. Meats, I realize, from a shudder in the grove's air, are human. It should be awful. It is awful. But with a calm, familiar only here, a calm I've never known in any other place, I find myself longing to taste the dish's savor, braised and stuffed, as Apicius writes, with lark's tongues. So something a little more cheerful after that. So the next poem I'll read is also started in Naples. It has water as part of it, so it's kind of part of the same marine landscape, maybe. But the speaker here is different. The speaker, you have to imagine the speaker in this poem is a sculpture. So it's a Renaissance bronze sculpture, and you have to imagine that the speaker is a Renaissance bronze sculptor who has been part of a shipwreck and has been lying on the bottom of the sea for a while. So that is who is speaking to you, okay? I think that's all you need to know. Oh, okay. Sorry, the other thing that is useful to you, I think it's clear when you read the poem. It's a little bit harder maybe if you're just hearing it. The traveler to whom the Renaissance sculpture at the bottom of the sea is speaking is another victim of a shipwreck, but is just a human drowned person who is on the bottom of the ocean. So it's kind of an implied dialogue between a statue and a drowned man. But it's a cheerful poem. More or less. Self-portrait as bronze. Across the bay's mirror a wary arrows. Traveler with pointed eyes, follow. Or, on this bed of sand, sleep beside a bronze girl drowned for centuries. The sea has wept my faience pupils away, which passed long hours watching shadows fingering the Flemish tapestries covetously while cardinals debated the color of smoke. Once, startled by the reek of a nuncio's monkey capering on its pearled leash, a mouse slipped from the wainscot to shelter in my hollow body. She nested in my elbow's crook. Bitter winter drafted the hall, but her small presence warmed the metal. It was like having a soul. Princes admired me, and we were sent abroad, crated like a wooden egg in the wooden bowels of a carack with snapping white wings. Then we were salt crumbs gnashed in the storm's teeth, until the hold cracked and waves tossed the cargo down triumphantly as a winning hand on the bays of the weedy bottom. Tides carried the Fickler treasures away, but not her. She is so loyal. Her bones are white coral inside the arm where you rest your head. Now, from the same depths, traveler, you and I gaze up at the constellations of bubbles boats scatter across our green sky. I try to fathom from their patterns a future, to imagine us circling beneath them like a nomad world, as I heard the astronomer summoned before the Pope insist ours is, roving a desert path between the stars. It dizzies me. Do you believe we might be that alone? Better those lights were diamonds blood-flecked on a pontiff's breast and winking as he howls, or glints off dervish blades reeling for the kill, or torches clutched in panicked hands fleeing the assassination. Anything that fires untended and indifferent. When winds beat the sea, I feel her, persistent relic, scraping within me, watchful, troubled. Tell me, what is that, if not a soul? A crow guffaws, dirty man throwing the punch of his one joke. And now, nearer, a murder answers, chortling from the pale hill's brow. From under my lashes' wings they stretch, clawed feet. There the unflappable years perch and stare. When I squint, when I grin, my new old face nearly hops off my old new face. Considering what's flown, what might yet fly, I lean my chin on the palm where my half-cash fortune lies. This is a tiny poem called Early. Early. Atop a shanty near an open sewer, a rooster shouts. A muezzin answers. Here the tongues of church bells are replaced by human throats. Fluency. Syria, 2009. One word you're probably familiar with souk, but the souk is the marketplace, right? And the souk is sort of the engine of the city. So the souk appears here. Fluency, Syria, 2009. Just returned from 6 months in the States, blinded by the burning screens of Google and Tweet to body language on the street, I'm slow to understand the girl pointing at heaven, then at her ear and mouth, telling me God made her deaf and mute. Shrewdly, her bronze gaze appraises me. I gesture at her stand and shrug. She flashes 10 fingers, then 10 again, showing what the lemons cost. I nod. She bags a kilo, pinching her veil between her lips to cover her tattooed chin. From my pockets I dredge a clutch of brassy coins. Without taking her eyes off mine, she counts out 20, then shuts her hand quickly, making a cutting motion once to say, "Halas, that's enough." Veil wrinkling in her teeth, she grins at me. Before universities, before embassies, the souk. Some palm-smoothed truth, warmed in this back and forth, will outlast all the information I've spent a half-year circulating. I weigh my words here, learning what they're worth. There is some irony to the fact like that's how bad my Arabic was. Even though I studied Arabic, I spent 8 months studying Arabic 40 hours a week, like all day. But the thing that happens when there are some Arabic speakers here. The thing that happens when you are studying Arabic at a place like the Foreign Service Institute in Washington D.C., which is where my husband and I did it, is you learn modern standard Arabic, which is not actually the Arabic spoken in a place like Syria. So you get to Syria and you're like, hey, and they're like, what? And you learn how to say things like we could say, I've joked about this before in other readings, but one of the things that always comes up is, you learn to say phrases like نتكلم عن برنامج نووي على Iran, which means, do you want to talk about Iran's nuclear program? And you're sort of like, but what you really want to know is like, where is the nearest place that I can park my car? Or, can I buy milk in that store? So anyway, so I spent a lot of time being confused and sort of, no, it's really true. You're just like, oh, this is foreign policy. So there was some irony in the fact that I felt like the first person that I connected with was this woman who could not hear and could not speak. And we connected. I was like, wow, this person understands me, and it's because we can't speak to each other. So it was true. It was sort of, and I never forgot her. I was like, she kind of stayed with me all through my time there. She's like, oh, this is kind of amazing. Okay, I'll read a couple more from this section. How are you guys doing? Yeah. All right. I'll read a poem called Wind. Since we're in a dry, desiccated desert climate, the wind is blowing. So the references in this poem, there's a couple of words that, again, I feel like these words may be now familiar to people because there's so much more coverage of the Middle East. But khamsin is a wind. It's called khamsin because it means 50. It blows for 50 days, or it's reputed to blow for 50 days. And the other thing that's referenced here is niqab. Woman's head covering that is actually. I have a niqab. I should have brought it to wear. Just to show. It's kind of amazing. It covers everything but your eyes and has a little thread so that it hangs over your face. And if you live in a windy place, it suddenly makes sense why people wear headscarves all the time, because if you don't have a headscarf, you look like an idiot because your hair is blowing all over the place and there's like wind in your face. So the whole issue of women in the veil, whatever one feels about it, takes on a different shading when one is in this climate. So there's a reference to a woman in niqab at the end of this. Also, the poem references the fact that Napoleon went to the Middle East. So, wind, called the 50 because it can blow that many days. Low through every crack, the khamsin moans, then rises to a howl loud enough to muffle the shabab gunning their motorcycles smokily in circles round the park. By noon, they've given up. Sand fills the air and the sun goes dark. No walk to the souk then. No run. Restless, I soak chickpeas, read recipes I know I'll never make, fritter half the afternoon away between half-interesting books. Where's that self? At home every place she lands, and landing always on her feet. This wind has thrown her compass off. When Napoleon met this wind coursing up the Nile on his campaign to liberate the Orient, it was France's first foray eastward since the last crusade. Learning its name's meaning, he thought, but can they really count that high? That was an underestimate. His plans went south. A canal across the Suez? No. Boulevards? Hospitals? A new system of weights and measure? No. No. They found the Rosetta Stone and took it, then left occupying soldiers cursing untranslatably in their chasseur blue jackets. Then those withdrew. Then civil war. There's a lull in the roar near 5. I shut my book and duck out to the mall for milk, but I've no sooner rounded the corner than I'm pinned against a wall by blasts scouring the condo tower. Between its teeth, the furious desert grinds my face. Whipping my hair into viperous coils that slash the tissues, I'm having a Sheol of a job holding tight against my mouth and nose. Can a wind hate you? I suppose I'm being silly. A passing girl flicks me a look of sympathy through the squints in her niqab. Anyway, okay, so the setting, the King's Baths, it's a group of women from the diplomatic community at this bathhouse. The King's Baths, Hammam al-Malik, Damascus, built 985 AD for Tracy and Samuel. Day and night, beneath caravanserai stars, when he's a man, Samuel will travel his dreams, seeking the echoing rooms of the hammam where, when he was 4, he scooped water from a pool carved in the oblong floor, while in a circle above him steamed globes spiced with every earthly color. The breasts a dozen diplomats and aid workers carried before them to Syria, along with his mother's. Splashing water pistols, soap in the eyes. Then supper spread banquet style along a low table as the apple smoke of nargila blew the air into an orchard, curling perfumed leaves up toward the dome. And Samuel, having launched his loofah like Saladin's mangonel against the infidel hordes at the Battle of Hattin, again at the Danish Red Cross director's head, before being demarched and disarmed long enough to share her bowls of hummus and za'atar, flung himself across his mom and fell asleep in the folds of her towel. So he never saw the hammam ladies drape themselves in black jilbab and sweep escaping wings of hair back into plaits tightly caged with clips beneath hijab, or his mother's colleagues swap Turkish terry robes for the limp, damp skins of hose and locker-wrinkled business clothes. Cold stars woke him. Goodbyes rose spiraling up alleys from the women, leaving the harem to resume once more the homely equilibrium between ceding ground and strategic shows of power, the tact and tactics for prevailing diplomatically over any state governed by children or kings. 30 minutes. Okay. I'm going to read just 2 more poems, I think, and then we'll... Okay, so we'll shift back to the United States. Read a snow poem. I know. Now some global warming for you. And now for a little global warming. This poem, this is the first poem in the last section of this book. I've spent a long time trying to figure out what this poem was about. And I think it's actually about having a bad job. Not the job that I have now, but I think it actually is. It was an utterly symbolic representation of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's, so you would never know that, I think, from reading the poem, but it occurred to me recently that that's what this is actually about. It's a poem from many years ago. Human Field. Now it snows. Invisible air given a ghost's body by motes fleet as the firefly's sexual isotopes, igniting the meadow with little half-lives, but colder. A starling flock, disrupted, ascends and circles twice in loose precision, high enough to seem the very negative of snow, emphatic, demanding, warm flesh below the feather, though their bones are hollow and their bivalve hearts lighter than a sanded clamshell or the whitest pearl. Winter's revenant invites you into it, and there you lie while the bleached sheet, accumulating, translates you to an angel on a solitary bed. Beat your wings to leave your signature, soul mark on the virgin manuscript. Or, still now, the figure weeping on a tomb. What are you hiding from in a body of snow? A touch and it melts on your finger. Because this is not your element, no matter how long you lie, unblinking, to watch it falling from a bloodless sky. Faster now, faster, till all the field is white. So anyway, I left that job. And one last poem. So this is I guess this kind of is a global warming poem. Although the thing that struck me, this is one of those poems where like the very simple fact of it is, like it shouldn't be this warm up, but doesn't it feel good, right? Like how many people did you not step outside today and were you not like, it's the end of the world, but this feels so good, right? I mean, it's terrible. It is, like we all know it, but we're like, oh, this is not good. But anyway, so here, this is for anyone who's been on the UConn campus, this is set at the UConn campus. For UConn students and etc. You will probably know the very fields that I'm speaking of here. Suspect. A week in January, warm as this, has the environmentalists shaking heads, and the redbud, now reckless, blushes, though snow forecasted in the coming days will surely chasten it. Why, knowing chlorofluorocarbons kindled this week's bright blazons, are we lightened? Over the college lawn, laughter wafts from bodies strewn beside a frisbee game, whose players shed their winter layers and use cast-off coats to mark the goal. Haven't we been schooled? How suspect a chemical is happiness? If the sun's unveiled eye, all evidence shows we should fear, still makes us bask in its splendor. Thanks.
Penelope, you are one of my favorite poets. You really have been for such a long time. So it's so nice to have you. Thank you very much for coming. It's so special for so many reasons. But one thing that makes it really special is we have Mr. McQuilkin at every single reading. So I realize we should take advantage of that. And we're going to have Rennie's supposed to read in the beginning of each reading, but because I was a bit disoriented, he's going to read now. So without further ado.
Knees folded, hands together, afloat in the womb, he will not wake. He is at peace, the only peace the world seems to know how to make. Sorry, but I needed to say that.
His collection, Present Vanishing Poems, received the 2009 Connecticut Book Award for Poetry. Mr. Allen's poems have been featured on Poetry Daily, in Garrison Keillor's The Writer's Almanac, in Ted Koozer's American's Life in Poetry. Mr. Allen was the Connecticut State Poet Laureate from 2010 to 2015. His newest collection, Zen Master Poems, will appear in the noted Buddhist publishing house Wisdom Incorporated in the summer of 2016. Please welcome Mr. Dick Allen.
I tried to keep the poet laureateship, but Rennie wanted it so much. So now I am an ex-poet laureate, and I really miss it. You know, it was quite an honor. I spent a lot of time at Hartford. What I'm going to do tonight is to start with some poems from my latest book. And I'm not sure if Penelope has her books here, but my books are here and they'll be for sale out there in case somebody wants them. And combine poems from the latest book and a couple of others. And then I'm going to go into a group of poems, and this will be the first time I've ever done this, of my forthcoming book, which comes out this summer, called the Zen Master Poems, which I'm quite excited about. I'll tell you more about that when we get to it. And then I'll end with a couple of other poems. So that's the kind of schedule. So now I hadn't really planned to start with this poem, but as I was driving up here from Fairfield County this evening, I saw the quality of light. I don't know if you noticed it today. And I had never seen that quality of light until about 3 weeks ago. And it was the kind of quality of light that if you take photographs there's no way you can take a bad photograph in it. It's something about the atmosphere, the cold, the warm, the change, and so on. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm an amateur photographer. I took about 15 pictures, and they're all good, which is, I mean, it's that kind. And so you might have seen it today as you came here, just a part of that light. And so let me begin with a poem of praise, which is simply called Light. Light. How much of it is about light? Winter light on tracks across the snow. Light on a windowsill. How the side of an old red barn takes light. Street light. Wind-blown rain slanting beneath it. Ambient light. Fluorescent light. The peculiar haze or glare of subway tunnel light. Red and gold, tiny triangle of light at the end of a matchstick. Light verse, light laughter, glow on a penitent's face, gazing into the light. Noon light without shadow, dusk light, settling into mountains like the Berkshires. Come on, baby, light my fire. The doors in the spotlight. How the world glows with such light, shimmers, sparkles, flickers, reflects as the sun rises, as the sun falls. Painters and poets bring from darkness such light. A touch of strange. Without it, a pepper shake a bit at least. The heron's sleepy look, the way green forests turn almost silver in late summer afternoons along the upper Hudson, and the twist of lemon in a lovely woman's eyes, these would not exist. Without it, no platypus, no penguin gliding down a sheet of ice, and no canoe-shaped clouds above moonrise. The politician lacking it can stride across a wooden stage, not hearing carpenters who nailed these boards together 90 years before his birth. Although he speaks to us of war and homelessness, without a touch of strange, he offers one more series of straight lines. No crows perch on his shoulders, and no vines twist his legs about. Lives cannot change without a touch of strange, without the safe falling from a perfectly blue sky, the ancient smell of rot and hunters' cries from mastodon tusks, the London waifs still at play in Dickens, and the pebble glass a leaf dents when it floats into a pond ruffled by the wind. What spins around the normal compass is the wild morass, its Merlin rocks and stones. We face the mysteries every day and turn away. And yet, what if one morning on an orange and gray clay cliff at Martha's Vineyard, we find fleur-de-lis, mandalas, 13 stars and stripes, a stick drawing of the president, or hear Cat Stevens build a tree hut out of song. Walk through a field where meadowlarks and John Deere tractors speak to one another. Then you might understand how strange it is to strangely be alive, to put your current maps aside and dive without a second thought from solid land into the strangeness of Hakusei's churning sea, Blake's marriage, Rilke's panther, Tichborne's jail. The real is always just a touch beyond the pale, a needlepoint of fireflies in the black ash tree. And tonight there's actually something more exciting than poetry going on, which is this god-awful political year. So I thought I'd read a couple of political poems. I won't exactly tell you my politics, but probably I share something with most of you. I'm going to read this poem twice because it's only 4 lines, and so you kind of get the image of it. It's just 2 couplets. It's called Political Styles, and it's got 2 things in it, high beams and low beams. All right, this first is high beams. High beams. Everything's bright and fully lit, just dazzling, except those coming at you can't see one damn thing. Low beams. How safely downcast you round every curve. You fear for us. We scorn your lack of nerve. Actually, it's lost of nerve. Same thing. I think that second one's probably about Jeb Bush. High beams. Everything's bright and fully lit, just dazzling, except those coming at you can't see one damn thing. Low beams. How safely downcast you round every curve. You fear for us. We scorn your loss of nerve. And, not even now that the cat's been declawed, and the last owl flew into the dank woods hours ago. For outside this year, it's really treacherous, filled with drunken couples and hunting dogs and Donald Trump. Sorry. No, that's it. I'm sorry. He's insane. I don't know what's wrong with the media. I don't know anything. I just can't understand what's going on there. And I've been following politics for 50 years. Anyway, sorry. Additionally, there are too few blue jays, and someone's always singing to the silver moon. So don't open the front door or the kitchen window, no matter how loudly or piteously the cat mews. It's just a cat. If you've kept the cat in the bag, don't let the cat out of the bag. If the cat has already used up 5 of its 9 lives by dangling from oak tree limbs, or falling into steep-sided bathtubs, or licking nail polish from poisoned toes, or crawling into strange laps beneath foul looks, and throwing itself under the feet of widowers, don't give it a 6th chance to do away with itself. Hum to it. The cat came back, the Canadian version. Tell it stories about caterpillars and catastrophes and catatonic mice living in holes behind baseboards, or read to it The Cat in the Hat, cat, hat, bat the cat, flat, sat, fat cat. What might keep the cat from scratching is milk, especially the milk of human kindness, bowl after bowl, and maybe a little tuna fish in the darkness. And also pat the cat, particularly if it claims Irish ancestry, and stroke its fur and tickle it under its ears and chin. Promise it higher modes of existence. If you have radiators, let it bask upon a radiator's warmth, or make it a point to leave your discarded clothing on the floor for the cat to nudge into. Whatever you do, don't rat on the cat. Distract it, chase it teach it to chase its tail and sleep with one paw over one eye. Since every single cat on earth is suffering severely from the narcissistic personality disorder, remember, you're still in charge. You can keep your secrets. And catnip's the last resort. You'll always have catnip. Skeins of wool and soothing hands and balls of twine. Put your foot down, please, hard. Don't let the cat outside. It's also a political poem, too. This is to one searching in a recipe book for comfort foods. All right, this is all my poems are a little bit strange, so this is another sort of a strange thing. But I really believe in the things that this poem is saying. I sort of. When jealousy overwhelms you, eat a bowl of tapioca pudding. All those glassy small eyes. If you can't stand yourself, find a comfortable chair, preferably dark green, and sit down in it. By the way, these all seem to be very zen. When you despair, do as Frost and Whitman did. Gaze at the farthest stars possible. When you've wasted still another day, imagine yourself in the army, spearing bubblegum cartoon papers. Should you keep on putting off what you should do, fill a red wheelbarrow half with turnips and half with English muffins. If life was fair, there'd be no salvage operations, or Zen, for that matter. Sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie. When you start to hear yourself whining for no reason, think of a reason. And whip it into a strawberry souffle. You think you know best? You probably do. Nevertheless, there's always the chill of February. Wild goose, brother goose, which is best? Wandering fool or a heart at rest? Don't resent the success of others. They too will fall over cliffs and eat things from drive-in windows. Higgledy-piggledy, my son John went to bed with his trousers on, one shoe off and one shoe on. Higgledy-piggledy, my son John. It's okay to feel sorry for yourself. Millions of others also hang around flagpoles and swimming pools. I know what you're going through, believe me. At the heart of it all, there's likely a tennis court. What shall we do of a drunken sailor or the violent poor, or a bib in a wheat field. When things go just about as wrong can be, sing, I say a little prayer. I say a little prayer for you. Even the Dalai Lama gets tired of listening to the Dalai Lama. Face it, you're an animal, but you're also a wobble in the space-time continuum. Look out for me, oh muddy water. Your mysteries are deep and wide. When you're disgusted with how things are turning out, turn yourself around, but go easy on the gravy. When you want to scream, calm yourself down by pretending to be a swamp. Squirrels in the ground, birds in the air. The thing about here is it's also there. I'm haunted by the image of an empty railroad station where a boy sits staring at a grandfather clock. If you can't beat 'em, join 'em, is the kind of advice you hear from the last Cheerio. I've spent my whole life looking out of windows, and it's never the same, not even on Wednesdays. There's nowhere like Mississippi. Nowhere. Not even in Mississippi. It all comes down to this, doesn't it? When you're in a fudge factory, don't refuse the fudge. That's my advice. I would have hung around more hot dog stands. I could have climbed that water tower to the top. I should have learned that Zen would calm me down. I might have found a rainbow and a small raindrop, or why life's balance between lost and found. I would have floated on my back at Walden Pond. I should have taught myself to auto-check my mind. I might have memorized Yeats' Leda and the Swan. I should have chewed a lot more grapefruit rind. I might have known some subways never stop. I wish I'd realized sooner how nostalgia turns to hate. I'd not have lost my bearings in the basement Goodwill shop. I should have guessed I'd walk that maze too late. I wish I'd gladdened more. I should have crept with snails. I would have found my way to San Jose. I could have dropped more breadcrumbs on the trail. When everyone left early, yes, I should have stayed. Okay, I had the strange experience, I keep using the word strange, my favorite word, of reading poetry on the Garrison Keillor show in November in Waterbury at the Palace Theater. That was a very strange experience, and I'd hoped he didn't know what he was doing. I mean, he's almost retired, so it was kind of difficult, frankly, but it was fun to be there. And a lot of people heard me that I hadn't heard from, and I really wanted to read this poem because this poem's got names of childhood friends in it, and I thought that'd be really give them a kick. You know, they're up in upstate New York and they're hearing their names on national radio and so on, but he didn't want to let me read this poem, so it's actually called It's 70, but I'm 76, so every year I change the title. This is now at 76. And it kind of, these are all real people that are mentioned in this poem. Some that I've known since I was like 5 years old. At 76. Someone said, we're like birds dropping down from the sky to land in this place or that place. And after a while, we vanish into the sky and don't come back again. As in my small childhood village, where fate or accident or our parents' poverty brought us for a while to live in the old camp cottages made year-rounds. Billy, Lindsay, Doris, Joanne, John and David Meager, Nancy Parker, Sharon Sanders, Wilcox Creedon, Almond Myers, Gary O'Brien, Shelby, Joyce. And now I'm thinking of that old familiar proverb, birds of a feather flock together, of violets and four-leaf clovers by the village tennis court, and the burdock bushes, and the dirt roads. In winter, how the snow fell through Norway pines. And if you lay on your back and shined a flashlight up into the snow, it would be like bombarded by tiny, soft meteorites coming out of the nowhere, as our souls had arrived so mysteriously. And even now, when one by one, scattered throughout the world, we're leaving it, leaving this place or that place where we stayed for such a short while, the thought nearly destroys me. The wonder and the sadness of it, the pathos, a flock of birds, crows, English sparrows, from this distance, who knows, vanishing like raindrops, snowfalls, who were once here in Round Lake Village, New York, the United States of America, planet Earth, our solar system, way out here on the fringe of the Milky Way. Billy, Lindsay, Doris, Joanne, Joe, and David Meager, Nancy Parker, Sharon Sanders, Wilcox Creedon, Almond Myers, Gary O'Brien, Shelby, Joyce, and actually all your friends, unbelievably here in all this dark and light, in this unbelievable splendor. Thank you.
Books will be for sale in the dining room, and our next reading is March 19th with John Stinizzi and Marilyn Malcolm.